Hello, everyone. Good to be back with you. Right now, we have with us another young Indian, Aanya Wig. Let's listen to her. Over to you, Anya.
Hi everyone, I'm Anya. I'm from India. I run my own nonprofit. It's called Her Haq. I work with women on menstrual hygiene, financial literacy, trying to work on public policy as well. And I'm somebody who creates content on LinkedIn. I'm a top voice for social impact and a lot more, but I feel like these two things are the most important. So I'm going to pause and hand it over back to you.
No, it's your turn to speak. You tell us what's on your mind. I'm not going to ask any questions. You tell
Okay,
us
great.
what's in your mind. You talk about it.
Okay, great. So I'll quickly introduce myself a little more and then let's see how this goes. So, yes, I run my own nonprofit. I've actually gone back to college now. So, I'm doing a law degree from Campus Law Center in India. I finished my undergraduate in history from LSR in 2021. And then I did another degree, which was a postgraduate diploma in international humanitarian law, human rights law, and refugee law. And along with that, I was working with UNESCO's cluster offices in New Delhi. So essentially, I was working on 6 countries on social and human sciences, gender, youth for equality, and a lot more. And then I did my first full-time job, which was with Udeti Foundation. There I was a part of the founding team working on women's economic empowerment. And then I changed my sector and worked with a venture capital fund called Beyond Capital Ventures, based out of the US that invests in India and Africa with a social impact lens. So, gender, climate change, livelihoods, and a lot more. Of course, along with all of this, I kept engaging with young people in India. I was a part of the Young People's Action Team at UNICEF UWA. And of course, I was creating content on LinkedIn. I was a part of the fellowship called SUSI Fellowship with the US Department of State. So essentially, I was one of the 4 girls representing India for a fully funded fellowship on women leadership. So that's a lot of things that I did after college. And during the last bit of my college, COVID happened in India. And I was, of course, at home, spent half of my college life at home. And I started this organization called COVID Fighters India, where essentially we were working in the second wave to help people get emergency response to medical needs. And we were working around the clock. We had a team of more than 13,000 people. So a lot of things that I feel like I've done in the past, but now I'm trying to take it slightly slow. I didn't think law would be as tough that it seems to be. I'm right in the middle of my exam. I actually gave an exam today morning. So yes, I think exam season is on. The weather is terrible in Delhi and just a lot that's happening around. But I'm trying to take it slow and not doing too many things for a while because I feel like I was a little exhausted after all of these things. So yes, I feel like I'm gonna pause for a few minutes and see in case you want to add something.
Yeah, tell us about your life at LSR.
I
Or
feel
you
like
actually 11th and 12th. Let's dig deeper. 11th
okay.
and 12th.
So, and I'll be very transparent, okay? When I was in school, I felt like school was the best thing and it was a great place to be. I was in DPS Noida. But, after I graduated, in hindsight, I realized that it wasn't the best place for me. And I'll tell you why. Uh, in school, a lot of the things that are told to us, a lot of the ideas that are fed into us are just things that we accept without questioning, right? The art of questioning for me just did not exist in school. For some things they did, of course, which is when I started, questioning gender norms, etc. But for things like what an ideal woman is or what a good man is, or all of these things were just fed into us so much that I started believing in a lot of those things. And because a lot of teachers would make you believe that you're not a good student or you're not a good female student on the basis of the length of your skirt and so many other things, I had started internalizing those things and I only came to realize that a lot of that internalization was quite negative for me once I went to a college. And the college that I went to was a girls' college. For people who don't know what LSR is, it's a girls' college in Delhi University in India. It's based out of New Delhi. And I was in an environment that was, of course, extremely intellectually motivating. But at the same time, it was the safest place, and nobody judged you for who you are, where you come from, what you wear, what you do. And it was just so abnormal for me, which is when I realized that sure, school was great. I got great friends and maybe a lot of exposure, but the kind of thoughts and ideas that were fed into me were the reason why I started losing a lot of confidence towards the end of my school life.
Hmm.
But I'm glad I studied enough to get good marks in a good college.
And what happened in LSR? What did you enjoy? I mean, you chose history, so let's know
Yeah.
why you're the first person, or maybe the second person I have
Yeah.
done. I've talked to now more than 500 people, young people in India. I think you're
Wow.
the second person who said I studied history. So let's see what
Yeah.
was the logic behind this choice. Not that I'm against history. I have
Yeah.
many people who studied history, including my father. So
Yes.
so way back in 1930s, he studied history. Okay. So I'm not, but I'm keen to know why in today's world you chose history.
Again, to be fairly transparent, I always wanted to do law, and I didn't study enough for the CLAT entrance, which is essentially the law entrance in India to get into one of the national law universities. And I did study a lot for my boards. I got 100 on 100 in history, and it was a subject I liked. I didn't get a good rank. I got into some of the colleges, but they weren't high enough in the law space. And I did get into a lot of private colleges that were really good, but I just could not afford it. I have a single parent who could not afford the fees. So law was out of question. And because I got a good percentage, I had to choose what I want to study. And I always thought that, okay, you know what, I'm just going to do my 3 year course here and then do law again. How does it matter? So let me just choose a subject which is going to be relevant there and something that I like. So honestly, history was never in the plan. I never thought about it too much. I got good marks. I got an admission. I just took it and went for it. That was literally the reasoning.
Any regrets?
Not at all. When I took the subject, I was so nervous and I was so conscious that I'm giving up a law degree and what am I going to do in my life after history? I don't want to be a historian. I don't want to work on archaeological services. So many things that I had very stereotypical notions of anybody who takes history. Just like you said, you've talked to 500 people. Imagine me, I know zero people who've taken history ever. I've never heard anybody say I did history honors. Uh, so back then, I was really nervous, but I was so happy and I'm so glad I took that decision because if it wasn't for LSR, I honestly don't think where I would be. And in terms of like the academic side of things, it's not like I'm doing anything related to history, but I felt like I had such great teachers and some subjects that was so interesting that I just learned the art of questioning and unlearning because there were so many things that we were taught in school as history, but at least in college it made us realize there are just versions of history. So that for me was the biggest learning. So zero regret.
Okay. And what else did you do in LSR apart from history? I've heard many young women from LSR. All of them do things, right? So what did you do?
So offline, right? I just spent a year and a half in college because
Right,
COVID happened.
right, right.
Uh, Well, my first year, I was super enthusiastic. So when you join LSR, there's this presentation that happens. All departments do it for you. And there's this list of 35 societies that are there in college. And they tell you, okay, you know what, this exists. If you want to apply, apply for it. And I feel like I don't know how many I applied for. So I was a part of 5, 6 societies in my first year. Then in my second year, I went on to be a position holder in the MUN Society. In my final year, I was leading the MUN Society of College. I was in National Social Service team. I started actually a social service project in LSR called Agas, which was essentially an intersection for women empowerment and climate change, where we taught women from marginalized communities the art of stitching and upskilling them, and use waste products to create material. And then we would organize stalls in different colleges and different events and sell those products. And the money that we got from those products would, of course, go back to those women. So that happened. I also started my nonprofit when I was in LSR. So this is 2019, and I actually started it with people who were from LSR. It was initially just a LSR thing. It was called Girl Up Rise before. And then, of course, in my second year, I did an internship with the Quint, which is a digital media house in India. And I wanted to be a journalist. If you were to ask me all the things that I wanted to be, I felt like I've done 5, 10 career changes already. But I wanted to be a journalist and I interned with them. I was only 18, and they really liked my work. And then when I turned 19 and I was just on the edge of finishing my internship, they offered me a part-time job. So I would do 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. college, and 5:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. I would do a night shift with the Quint. I also needed to earn money, and this was the best way to do it. Extremely exhausting 6 months, but I feel like I learned so much. So
Mm.
yeah, these are few things that I did at my time in LSR.
So what did you do for the Quint?
So I used to work in their social media team. I started out as an intern that would work on assisting them for social media, but then eventually reached a stage where I started writing articles and covering news as well. I was there, luckily, when the 2019 elections happened. And then I started, when I was working part time with them, handling social media with them. So deciding the kind of content that's going to go out, how
Mm.
is it going to go out, what platforms it should go out on. So a lot of social media things.
Okay. And then uh, you got a job right after LSR, right?
So not right after LSR. So I graduated, I did a postgraduate diploma, and
Yeah.
along with actually intern with the Quint. It was only, I would say, 6 to 8 months later that I got the job. Because I didn't sit for placements. I was so deeply entrenched in the COVID relief work that I was doing. I had no time or no bandwidth to sit for internships or placements for that matter. And I was also not honestly interested in doing the typical consulting job and a consulting role. It's just something that I've never found interesting. And I was extremely burnt out. I did too much during my time in college, and I did too much in the 8 months of COVID relief. And I was working literally around the clock. So I decided not to apply for a job or sit for placements.
Okay. So when did you decide to take a job?
When I felt like I had some bandwidth to go back to working. And also, I think I was lucky that I came across the Udeti Foundation. And the thing was, they weren't actually hiring young people. I saw the work that they were planning to do because it was a fully new org, right? They were looking for a founding team. And I cold emailed them and I told them that, listen, I obviously don't qualify for the role that you're looking for. But I'm somebody who's very passionate about women's rights and I've been working on it. So just let me apply. And they reached out to me, they let me apply. I did an application, did 3 rounds of interviews, and then I
Mm.
got in. So I
Mm.
feel like timing and bandwidth were two things that played in my favor.
Okay. And how was the job?
It was good. I learned a lot, especially from my manager. Her name is Ranjini. She was a lawyer herself, and she'd been working public policy for a really long time. I think, I mean, of course, people keep talking about a lot of things that they learn from their job, but I just learned how important it is to know how to work in an office because skills you can learn on any job. You work at a management consultancy firm, you work at a media house, skills you'll pick up. It's learning how to navigate the workplace that's important. And there was just so much knowledge that I gained about women's economic empowerment in India, the lack of female participation, the biases that they face, what potentially can happen. I even learned about concepts like unpaid work that I had no idea about, or at
Mm.
least didn't know the terminology behind these things, right? And I was engaging with people who were really senior, women who were industry leaders, or women who would face so much in their life. And I was super new to this space. I think I was what, 20 years old, 21 years old when I started working. So I got to learn and soak a lot of knowledge.
Okay. And then you decided to quit.
Yeah.
I mean, just tell us why, why so many twists and turns?
Uh, I mean, of course, there are many reasons, but one was definitely the fact that after working for over a year and a half, almost, I worked there for almost two years. And towards the
Mm.
end of those 1.5 years, I started to realize that there is going to be a stage where I need to have some sort of expertise to remain in the policy sector. I mean, of course, we see AI, we see so many things that are happening. But for someone like me who wants to accelerate my growth, I need to have some sort of expertise. I mean, of course, I could go in a generalist role, and of course, I could be good at some things, but there needs to be some sort of differentiating factor between me and another 25-year-old and why they should be higher. And I
Mhm.
had this really big inkling to go back to law. So I had given the entrance. I'd sat for the entrance in like April. I only found out about my results like in October, which is when I decided to quit my job. But I hadn't found out about law till then. What another big reason was that I wanted to earn more money. I wanted to support my mom. She's a teacher, so I really wanted her to leave school, and I wanted to support her and get into a space where I could earn more money. And also new skills. Like I've been in the nonprofit sector for a while. This was also sort of impact but a foundation. So I wanted to see how other side of things work. So I would break this down into learning new skills, earning more money, and also going back to law. And thankfully, all of those things fell together. Like I got to work with a VC fund, then I came back to law. So yeah.
But you've lost income now, now that you are,
Yes.
so, I mean, so you're looking for future income. You're sacrificing it today, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, it was a very big decision for me to actually take when I got in. I had applied knowing that, oh, you know what, I want to go back to law. But I think once you start earning money, and if you're somebody who's not just supporting yourself, but contributing to the house, going back to a degree, especially for a 3-year degree, this isn't a year-long degree, right? It was a very big decision for
Yeah,
me.
that's what I'm asking.
But I feel like, and I was really confused, right? Because I thought in the next 3 years I could earn so much more money and do so many other things, and I will be transparent again. Like I have selfish dreams as well, right? I want to travel, I want to buy things, I want to do all those things that I couldn't when I was growing up, but or provide all of those things for my family that we didn't have access to when I was growing up. But I realized that, like you said, right? The fact that I've always wanted to do law, and I would probably never get to be what 22, 23 again and take that decision. Because I will be 27 and I will continue earning money till whatever age. I will not have the bandwidth or even the mental capacity to go back to college. So this was closer. And then, of course, my mom really told me that, I shouldn't worry so much about contributing at home, which obviously didn't take away the pressure that I put on myself. But like you said, right, I realized that if in these 3 years I'm able to do or gain experience and get this degree, I can make up for the money that I've lost in those 3 years sooner than I would have without maybe a professional degree. This
True.
is my hope.
I
This is
think you're
not,
right. I think you're right. I agree
yeah.
with that. I think you're right. If you can afford it, it's a good, I like the decision. But how does it sort of coexist with this non-profit group desire?
I'm lucky that my college hours are really less, right? So I come back home by me like I travel a lot. It takes me 3 hours back and forth, and I spend a lot of time in traveling. But I mostly have half of the day or the evenings to myself, which is what I spend, of course, with her, having a lot of meetings. And most of the work or meetings happens at night because all of our volunteers are either based out of college or are early professionals and are working. The other thing is that with law itself, I was somebody who really wanted work on legal literacy. One thing that I was passionate and still am is prevention of sexual harassment at the workplace for women. And I realized I can only do so much by reading and explaining to people. But if I get that kind of knowledge, I think it's essential that women know about their rights and not just sexual harassment, right? Even if it's in terms of just being independent, even if it's things like domestic violence, or even if it's basic things like something goes wrong, where do you go file an FIR? So all of these things I felt like were very important for me to know, but also for the communities that I worked with. And I thought this was like a great integration into all of the things that I want to do.
Okay, so it sounds like you're getting ready to make a big bang once you get your law degree.
I hope this is my big hope.
Okay, good. So I like people who are aiming for a big bang. Anything else you want to tell us? Something on your mind?
Um, I mean, honestly, this isn't gender related. I was just cribbing to a friend that I'm paying very less fees for my college. Of course, I'm just paying 6,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees annually for my fees, which is why I could afford law school and go to it, and which is great, right? Um, education at affordable rates for people like me is amazing, and people who come from even more marginalized communities is phenomenal. But the thing is that in this process of getting education that is lesser in cost, there are so many other things that one has to give up into. So, for example, the infrastructure of my college that I'm studying in. When I was in LSR, I had great faculty, but I also had great infrastructure. College was amazing, everything was amazing. But here, the infrastructure is poor. I'm sitting in, I don't know how many degrees without proper working fans, with like 70 students cramped up into a classroom giving exams, just trying to focus and sweating and drenching with sweat every day, right? So I just feel like while we, of course, agitate and demand for accessible education, I think it needs to be accessible quality education and infrastructure. But of course, because of course, all of us are paying such high taxes, but unless we demand for better quality for students, I don't think we will have more students who would want to stay in India. I mean, of course, like people keep leaving, and those who can't afford to leave will be stuck with marginal education and marginal qualities of infrastructure. So I really hope that in the next few years, and I want to see how I can contribute to, of course, creating awareness about this. But an institution that has existed for over 100, 150 years should not die out because there is whatever corruption, bureaucracy, and so many other reasons, right? It is the reason why so many young people in India can access education. So it should be quality education and not just like a stamp paper education.
Okay, all right. I think the quality of legal education in India in the conventional colleges, and they were never expected to be education. It was a holding place, right? I have
Yeah.
one of my nephews is a lawyer and doing well. He says, I never learned a thing in law college.
Yeah, that's what everybody tells me. And so I don't want to be a typical lawyer. Okay. I will probably not go into litigation and
Yeah,
white collar jobs and work at a firm. I really want to continue in public policy. So for someone like me, if honestly that this, and this is the general idea, you're absolutely right. Everybody, all my friends who are lawyers or all the seniors that I know who are lawyers keep telling me that they learn nothing from law school. And I'm just so lost because I don't want, if I'm spending time at law, I want to learn at law school. Um, so yeah, I mean it's sad, but you're right. It's the reality. Like it's just a mindset that people should. It's just a place where you come and give exams. You
right,
don't really learn anything.
right. Okay. All right. Any tips you have for young people? Because you have a lot of experience by now.
Um, Honestly, I think it depends on the kind of young person. But a general tip that I give people is that um, and now more than any time ever, I've seen a lot of young people constantly running behind a very atypical career path, which is they go to college, they do an undergrad, probably like an econ or a math honors or a BCom or some sort of typical degree, run for a consultancy job, work at Big Fours, do an MBA, and then decide what they really want to do. And they're so afraid of changing careers. Um, I'm somebody who honestly, if somebody were to ask me what's your background, it'll be hard for me to pinpoint and say, oh, I'm an expertise in this. But I've really worked in a lot of places, and that's exactly what's helped me stay afloat and be ahead of a lot of my peers who've just followed a typical career path because that's normal and that's what's acceptable. So I
Hmm.
think one advice to young people would be that you should experiment, and you should experiment if you have the resources and the bandwidth to have the option to experiment. Because if you will always get the chance of doing an MBA, you will always get the opportunity to work at a consultancy firm anytime in your life. But you will not get the chance to pick up skills at other jobs, at other places, and get the knowledge. Everybody, and it's really funny, and people will hate me for saying this. If you talk to a young group of management consultants who've just gotten into the management consultancy role right after college, all of them will have such a similar way of looking at things and such a similar way of addressing problems. But if all of us are going to think the same way, I don't know how we will move ahead. So I really feel unconventional paths should be acceptable, and young people should really experiment and sometimes follow what they find exciting than what's great for, I don't know, their CVs.
Okay. But tell us a bit more about your nonprofit.
Um, so essentially, we started in 2019 and we would only work on menstrual hygiene. What we would do is we would go offline and take workshops of young adolescents, men and women in the session, to train them about puberty, about stereotypes about periods, and of course, periods in itself. One thing that we realized very early on, and the reason why I started this was the stereotypes begins as soon as people find out about periods in schools or otherwise, and boys are completely excluded from the conversation. And that's why a lot of the misunderstandings, a lot of the stigmatization exists. So we wanted to make sure that we bring in boys early on, into this educational space, but also this safe space that we want to create so that they're able to contribute and support menstruators at home. That was definitely one. And with time, I realized that, the kind of access that I had to networks and exposure at college, a lot of women in India don't. And financial dependence in India is extremely high amongst women. They rarely are covered under individual health insurances, mostly depend on husbands. A lot of girls and women depend on men for managing their finances. Sometimes they don't even know where their money is going, and a lot of those things, right? And like I said, legal literacy. So I decided that, what, it's important to talk to women who have access to income and train them about how not just to save their income but effectively utilize it. We're staying in a country and we're staying in a world that inflation is super high, but also independence needs to be super high. So that's something that we started doing. But along with that, of course, we do a lot of other things, right? Campaigns on social media to generally talk around taboos related to women. I try and focus a lot on mentorship of younger women and people probably older than me as well. Last week, I talked to somebody who had a son who was older than I was, something about her career. And it just made me realize that women in a lot of spaces, regardless of age, just don't have access to mentorship, which is such a big reason for them not moving ahead in their careers. So, mentorship, financial literacy, legal literacy, menstrual hygiene, women's health, a lot of these things. And just one last thing that we've started working very recently is public policy. Um, After, of course, 2, 3 years of running my nonprofit, I realized that if I want to be honest with myself, I can only do so much while working on ground. And it's only policies and people who are elected to make those policies that can create nationwide change. And now we're trying to see different things with a gender lens and demand for different things. So we've recently analyzed the budget that was there last time and has now come in to see the gender aspect, the amount of money that's going into the budget, but also how much of it is being effectively utilized. And we've written to over 100 members of parliaments to um, sort of give solutions on what could be done effectively within their own constituencies and how they can bring in gender into the mainstream conversation. Because if they don't, it's going to be impossible for us to see a nationwide change.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. Anything else you want to add here?
Not really. I feel like I've spoken so much that people will get tired of listening to all the things that I have to add.
All right. Good. Then let's end it here today. Thank you so much, Anya, for being here. I'll be back with another young person or an expert soon. Bye till then. Bye, everybody.